In ancient China, a majestic temple stands between misty mountains and sparkling rivers. A refuge of wisdom, it resonates with the chanting of monks and the rustling of willows. It is here that a story of love and poetry will be written between passion and tradition. Madame Kui, a noble and respected widow, takes refuge in the temple after the death of her husband, seeking protection from the unrest sweeping the country. Strong and proud, she watches over the honor of her family and the future of her daughter Yingying, subject to the strict rules of tradition. Yingying, a young woman of rare beauty, grows up in the shadow of temple walls, surrounded by elegance and poetry. Rigorously educated, she masters the literary arts, but her heart secretly dreams of a free love, far from the constraints imposed by her mother. Zhang Gong, a talented young scholar, comes from a modest but distinguished family. A brilliant calligrapher and poet, he travels from province to perfect his knowledge, dreaming of success in the imperial examinations. His sharp mind and eloquence earn him the admiration of his peers, but beyond the classical texts, his heart yearns for an encounter that will change his destiny. One morning, as Zhang strolls through the temple garden, he spots Yingying under a cherry tree reading a poem. The wind gently lifts her embroidered sleeves. Their eyes meet, a moment suspended between shyness and fascination. Without a word, an emotion is born, deep and silent, like a promise left to the wind. Disturbed by their encounter, Zhang can't sleep. Under the flickering light of an oil lamp, he picks up his brush and puts his thoughts on paper. He composes a love poem, mingling admiration and discreet desire, where each line evokes grace and Yingying's fleeting shadow under the willows. A veiled but ardent message. Witnessing Zhang's turmoil, Hong Ning, the Kui family's faithful servant, seizes the poem. In the early hours of the morning, she returns to Yingying's quarters and hands over the scroll. One evening, as the temple is plunged into silence, a band of armed bandits bursts in, shattering the peace. Panic-stricken monks and residents seek refuge as the assailants ransack and pillage without mercy. The cries echo and the shadow of the threat hangs heavily over the sacred sanctuary. Faced with the bandits, Madame Kui doesn't back down. Dignified and resolute, she steps forward to face them. With a firm voice, she tries to reason with their leader, Sun Feihu, reminding him of heavenly laws and the punishment of the unjust. But the bandits laugh at her words. Their leader declares that they will not leave empty-handed. Cornered, Madame Kui has no choice but to negotiate. As a last hope, she proclaims in front of everyone that whoever drives out the bandits will win the hand of her daughter Yingying. A murmur crosses the assembly. The young girl turns pale at these words. Her fate has just been sealed by a desperate promise. Zhang doesn't back down. With a handful of young scholars, he devises a ruse. They light torches on top of the ramparts and sound war drums, giving the illusion that an army is approaching. Panic-stricken, the bandits, convinced they were surrounded, retreated without a fight. Zhang's audacity and ingenuity have saved the temple. Madame Kui, despite her promise, changes her mind. As far as she was concerned, a scholar without title or fortune had no claim to her daughter's hand in marriage. A marriage must ensure honor and stability, not be dictated by a debt of gratitude. Thus, she imposes an insurmountable barrier between Zhang and Yingying. Hongyang, faithful servant and confidant, cannot bear Yingying's distress. In secret, she organizes a rendezvous between the two lovers. Under cover of night, she slips Zhang a message, a discreet path, a precise time, a unique chance to meet again. In the silence of the sleeping temple, Zhang cautiously advances under the pale moonlight. Behind a screen of branches, Yingying waits for him, her heart pounding. A glance, a shiver, a stolen embrace. That night, words are useless. All that counts is the irrepressible impulse that unites them. At dawn, Zhang leaves the temple gazing out at the horizon. Before him, steep mountains, winding rivers, a long journey to the city of Chenghan. There he will devote himself to his studies, driven by the hope of one day reuniting with Yingying. At Changhan, Zhang immerses himself in his studies with unfailing determination. Under the flickering light of candles, he copies ancient texts, memorizes the classics. The days pass, the seasons change, but his mind remains fixed on a single goal: to succeed and return to Yingying. In a secluded garden, Zhang closes his eyes and meditates. Far from the hustle and bustle of the world, he lets his mind wander. The image of Yingying appears to him, soft and distant, like an elusive dream. Every night under the silent moon, his heart whispers her name. Days go by, seasons come and go. Zhang, immersed in his studies, never forgets Yingying. By candlelight, he traces delicate characters on paper. Each letter carries the echo of his love. Each word a silent oath. He sends his thoughts across the distance, hoping they will reach her heart. After years of effort, Zhang finally obtained his state diploma, proof of his wisdom and perseverance. Buoyed by this honor, he doesn't delay. The wind carries his horse as he rides back to the temple. His heart beats to the rhythm of his steps. Soon he will see Yingying again. Back at the temple, Zhang presents himself to Madame Kui. This time he's no longer a mere student but an accomplished man. He recalls his promise, his unfailing love. Madame Kui observes him in silence, then nods. Her daughter's honor is safe. The union can take place. In the soft evening light, Zhang finds Yingying under the cherry tree in the garden. He takes her hand tenderly and whispers, "Your mother has given her consent. We will be united at last." She looks down, moved. A smile lights up her face. Their wait is coming to an end. In the temple's sacred precincts, draped in red silk, Yingying faces Zhang with a look of love in her eyes. Prayers rise to the heavens, offerings perfume the air. Before deities and ancestors, they exchange vows. Their destiny is sealed. Zhang and Yingying's love defied the odds. Yet stories vary about their fate. Some say they lived happily ever after. Others that Zhang, carried away by ambition, ended up drifting apart. So goes life, fragile and uncertain. But their story remains, eternal, inscribed in our hearts. The story of the Western Pavilion is a timeless masterpiece, spanning centuries and interpretations. It is above all an ode to passionate love, but also a reflection on social conventions and the weight of destiny. Each era has seen a different lesson. Some read in it the triumph of sincere love, others a warning against the illusions of impossible love. In the best-known version, Zhang and Yingying eventually marry, but other stories offer a more tragic conclusion. In one, Zhang, overtaken by ambition and convention, abandons Yingying, leaving her to languish in grief. In another, even darker, the young woman, unable to bear the separation, dies of despair. So, depending on the version chosen, the story oscillates between hope and fatality, promise and disillusionment. But beyond these different endings, one question remains: is this story a celebration of love or a warning of its fragility? It's up to each of us to find our own truth.